the demand for margarine will increase, which will ultimately increase the price of margarine, provided the supply of margarine does not change. But initially, the demand, the increase in the price of butter will definitely increase the demand for margarine, because most people, most consumers will shift from buying butter and shift to the buying of the margarine, and that is the effect on the two products that are substitute. On the other hand, a decrease in the price of butter will attract more customers that are used to buy margarine to come and buy butter, and that is how it goes hand in hand. The second type is joint or complementary demand. Two or more goods are said to be jointly demanded when they must be consumed together, provided a given level of satisfaction. For example, we have cars and fuel, we have compact disc and CD, and we have so many other ones like that. These are the products that one is useless without the other. One cannot be useful without the other one. And this type of demand can also be categorized into two. There are two perfect complementary goods, and we have imperfect or poor complementary goods. For perfect complementary goods, these are the goods that practically one cannot be useful without the other. Example is car and fuel. Though there are some other solutions to that which can replace the fuel now, but presently we still have car and fuel as part of the perfect complementary goods. On the other hand, for imperfect complementary goods, a goods cannot do without the other so long as a substitute is obtained. For that one, we can have, for complementary goods, for complementary demand, a change in the price of one good affects the demand for the other good. If there should be an increase in the price of a compact disc player, there will be a decrease in the demand for the disc, other things being equal. Those are the two examples that we check now. The third one is derived demand. When the demand for a particular product is not for the sake of that product, but for the sake of what we want to get from the product, then we call the demand for that product as derived demand. For example, wood may be demanded for the purpose of manufacturing furniture and not for its own sake. So it is because of what we want to get from the wood, that's why we are demanding for wood. Here, the demand for wood is derived demand. It's derived from the demand for furniture. Demand for wood is therefore a derived demand. Factor of production such as land, labor, capital have derived demand. That means we derive and we demand those factors of production not purposely because of their own satisfaction, but because of what we can get from them. This is because an increase in demand for commodity will result in an increase in the factors of production as producing a particular product. And the last one, we have composite demand. Composite demands apply to commodities which have several uses or are demanded for several or different purposes. That is, we can use those products for more than one purposes. Wood, as mentioned earlier, as an example, is we can use it for more than one purposes. We can get some other products from wood, like table, chairs, windows, doors, and the rest. A change in demand for one particular product that is composite demanded will definitely affect the other. That means if the demand for a particular product, another example of that composite demand is like flour. We can use flour to bake so many different snacks, to get egg roll, to get fish pie, to get meat pie, to get bread, and so on like that. But a change in the demand for flour will definitely affect the demand for other products that we can get from those particular products. If there is an increase in demand for table, this will result in a higher price being paid for the wood. That means the price that increase on table then will affect the price of the wood, because it's from the wood that we can derive the food. And if there is an increase in demand for bread, definitely there will be a high price on flour, because it is from flour that we can get the bread, and that is demand. The types of demand that we have. Supply. The other part of the theory of demand and supply is supply. We just treated the demand part of it. The supply, when we say supply, this quantity supply refers to the amount of a certain goods that the producer are willing to supply to the market for consumption. The correlation between price and how much of goods or services to supply to the market is also known as a positive relationship. There is a kind of positive relationship between the quantity supply and the price. Why? Because the suppliers, the producers, will always want to produce more when the price is high, so that they will be able to make more profit. That is the reason behind the positive relationship between the quantity supply and the price. Now, the law of supply. We treated the law of demand the other time, that says the higher the price, the lower the quantity. The reverse is the case for supply. The higher the price, the higher the quantity supply, because of the positive relationship between the supply and price. This means that the higher the price of a particular product, the more of that particular product the suppliers will always want to produce for the sake of profit making. Because all the suppliers in the market, their major aim is to make profit, so that they will be able to continue the production. Producers supply more at a high price because they want to make more revenue. Now, the demand and supply schedule, they goes hand in hand. In this case, this is an example of demand and supply schedule. The supply column trying to show us the amount of quantity that the supplier are ready to provide to supply into the market, whereas the demand column is showing us the quantity that the consumers are ready to consume at a particular price, as shown in the demand and supply schedule. So the two are together in order to show us the relationship between the two and how they relate together with the price. So when the supply and the demand are equal at a particular price, then we said there is an equilibrium. That is where the equilibrium comes in. That means that is the point at which both supplier and the consumers are in agreement. So when there is an equilibrium, that means the supplier and the consumers, they are in agreement in terms of the quantity supplied and quantity demanded at a particular price. So at this point, the allocation of goods is at its most efficient, because the amount of goods being supplied is exactly the same as the amount of goods demanded. Thus, everyone, both individuals, firms, and companies, is satisfied with the current economic situation. That means everyone is satisfied in the market. At this given price, suppliers are selling all the goods that they produce, and the consumers are able to purchase all the goods that they desire to purchase in the market. And from the graph, this is the demand, the curve showing the relationship between the supply and the demand in the market. You can see the supply curve is the one going from left to the right, going upward from left to the right, while the demand curve is the one coming down from left to the right. So the point at which the two of them intersect is the point we call the equilibrium point. At this point, the price of good will be a particular price, and the quantity will be in agreement both for supply and demand, as shown in the diagram above. In the real marketplace, equilibrium can only ever be reached in theory. So the prices of goods and services are constantly changing in relation to the fluctuation in demand and supply. That means to have this kind of situation in a practical life, in real life situation, is somehow difficult, because the supplier will always want to produce more as more of the profit he or she is earning, and the consumers will always want to get more at a lower price so that they will be able to save more. That means, in most cases, this point of equilibrium is not really feasible. But what is common to so many situations is to have a kind of what we call disequilibrium. Disequilibrium is a situation where either the price, the demand is more than the supply, or the supply is more than the demand. When the demand is more than the supply, we say we have excess demand. And when we have supply more than the demand, we say we have excess supply. So if the price is set too high, excess demand will be created within the economy, and there will be allocative inefficiency. At the price where at the point where the price is so high, there will be excess demand in that situation. But the other way around, we can have excess demand where the demand is more than the supply. In that case, we have excess demand. That means the price is so low. And the suppliers are not ready to provide more into the market, because they will not be able to make much profit. And in that case, the consumers are still willing to buy more when the producers are producing at a very low rate because of the low price of the product in the market. Let's consider some questions under demand and supply. Number one, a normal demand curve is dash. Option A, downward sloping from left to right.